Number 5. Uluru Rock. If you're heading down under for vacation this year, well, there's a certain object that remains very cursed there that people don't really recommend you tamper with. And it's huge. Uluru Rock. Yeah, this massive sandstone monolith in Australia was discovered on paper in 1873 by surveyor William Goss. He named the landmark Ayers Rock in honor of the then Chief Secretary of South Australia, Sir Henry Ayers. Known as such, of course, until 1993 when it was officially renamed to Uluru, honoring the title originally given to the Anangu First Nations peoples, to whom the site is sacred and, more importantly, home. This thing is strange. First off, this place is highly sacred, stumbled upon by the First Nations people of the northern Aussie area for who knows how long. This site has been known over the eons to have strange powers though, i.e. any tampering, stealing, defacing, or slandering the megalith is a sure way to test your luck against, well, the universe. This place shouldn't be messed with. One man stole a chunk of rock from the monument and experienced so much bad luck that he actually drove 3,000 kilometers to return it in person, in an attempt to rid himself of the karma he believed was attached to him. The chip was returned 40 years later. The largest piece of rock that was ever returned back to the site weighed more than 70 pounds. Yeah, this is serious stuff. First off, how the hell did you sneak that off the site? Like, did he just back his truck up to it like, yeah, just chip that big rock off, put it all in. He apparently wrote, "Dear Australia, I am so sorry I took this piece of Uluru. I wanted a piece of Australia to take home with me and this was the wrong thing to take. I hope Australia can forgive me and welcome me if I ever come back. Signed, an unwise traveler." Yeah, the reason they advise visitors not to take anything is the paranormal omens connected to said rock. Also, this is a giant rock we're looking at, like only a tenth of its mass you can see. It's like an iceberg, like underground. So before you experience any bad luck, illness, or karma beyond karma any day soon, I just collect seashells and skip this whole thing. No? Number 4, the Voynich manuscript. As always, if you like what we do here at Top 5 Scary, make sure to hit that like button down below or comment down below which archaeological find you know of that has impending doom upon the discoverer. I love this stuff. It's scary beyond all belief, but it's interesting. We're all about it here. And speaking of, so apparently there's a giant Italian Renaissance-ish folio called the Voynich manuscript. It's named after Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish-Lithuanian book dealer who purchased it in 1912. Yeah, we don't really know what this thing is. One thing it most certainly is would be the most bizarre and mysterious book of all time. 100%. Not only is it detailed so carefully and patiently, it's all like Tim Burton-like, with an entire world drawn and recorded that isn't ours. Like, is this a parallel universe book? Is this language even known? Like, it's unknown, like predates Latin and doesn't even use phonetic patterns and coding. It's the riddle of all riddles. Written in the 15th century, somewhere they think between 1405 and 1450, all 240 pages are inscribed in some sort of indecipherable language, with a small alphabet only of about 170,000 characters. Yeah, it's gonna take a while for them to crack this one. The contents alone have cursed people mad, with obscure visions and obsessions for years. My precious. Historians and cartographers have tried to crack the code for hundreds of years, yet not one has been successful. Why wasn't this a national treasure movie? I feel like this would have been perfect. Was it written by people from another world? An unknown species? It's so familiar yet so alien. Radiocarbon dating from the University of Arizona proved for all pages tested that once started, the writing was continuous for like 20 years. Protein testing revealed that the parchment was actually skin. About 150 calves slain for this Goliath mystery. It remains at Yale, waiting to be decoded to this day. Creepy! Number 3, metal balls. So metallic floating shiny balls have been recorded for years. Giant metallic balls like this have been found literally littered around the planet for decades apparently. Ufologist and professor at Stanford Gary Nolan is currently studying these metal Malteser looking things right now that people have collected and auctioned off since the 50s. Right now in Texas there's a dude who has a ton of these apparent real alien tech. Jim Marlin, famous music producer, was given these metal giant pinball looking spheres by a celebrity's bodyguard apparently, who said that they were dropped from a craft in his backyard in the early 50s. And like, a lot of celebrities have touched these. Dennis Hopper, Jane Fonda, that's Hollywood people. These things are famous on their own. They also move on their own, and apparently hold power and light up once in a while on their own. Yeah. That's not scary at all. Hey Dad, after Survivor, can you just move your metal giant floating balls out of the living room? Yeah, Mom asked me to ask you. In the 70s, the Betts family of Florida came across a small metal sphere the size of a bowling ball in the woods behind their house. Their first thought was the sphere was an old cannonball from a battle. They decided to take the sphere home, and when the sphere seemed to react to the sound of music in the house, making a throbbing, pulsating noise, later the sphere was even seen rolling on its own and would even stop and change direction in the house. Yeah, that's terrifying. Even the Navy went there and checked out these giant mysterious metal orbs. Every time I'm on Reddit seeing these like light orbs trucking around the skies, I can't help but think, is that them? Like, that's them. One thing's for sure, they don't seem to be made here. Number 2, the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism is an anomaly on its own. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's basically an ancient computer that uses the cosmos to predict astronomical events. Thought to have been the first analog computer ever created, and no, it wasn't made in a garage in 1997 somewhere. It was invented by who knows who, like 2,000 years ago. Captain Dimitrios Kontos and his crew of sea sponge divers discovered the Antikythera shipwreck in early 1900 just off Antikythera in Greece, hence the name. I also find it hilarious that divers diving for something you wipe your butt with found an ancient computer. Like, something about that just amuses me. They recovered tons of artifacts during the expedition, helping pull up the shipwreck and this precious baby. Many thought it was cursed immediately after its first handlings. Apparently after its discovery, 3 of the divers who dove down died shortly after its find. Presumably of course of the bends, of overwork, but locals think this device was to blame. At 150 feet deep, just off Point Glyphadia, the Greek island, the team retrieved millions in bronze and marble statues, pottery, glassware, jewelry, coins, and this ancient mechanism. It was a find of a century and still is. The device is made entirely out of a single bronze sheet, built in a wooden case about the size of a shoebox. The case and its faces are covered with Greek inscriptions, which indicate the device's astronomical and calendrical purpose. It's basically a computer built entirely out of cogs, wheels, gears, and faces, and it would tell you where you were amongst the cosmos. The first alarm clock, computer, calendar hybrid. Again, 2,200 years ago. Like, no machinery, no watches, no laser cutters. Basically everything we have in our iPhones right now within a wooden box 2,000 years ago. Again, it's funny, they were collecting sea sponges to wipe our butts and then stumbled upon a computer. Yeah. You can find it at the National Archaeological Museum of Athens. And number 1, the Codex gigas. Obviously, this one's gonna be my number 1 pick. Apparently it translates to giant book, and it's big. It weighs about 170 pounds. Yeah, I'm kind of like really uncomfortable what I've learned and read about this book. It's the largest medieval manuscript in the world. The manuscript is also known as the Devil's Bible due to its highly unusual full-page portrait and detail of Satan and the legends surrounding its creation. Illuminated Bibles were a typical feature of Roman monastic books, but even with this one, the page size alone of the gigas is notably larger for its time, and it's made out of about 180 donkeys. Yeah, sorry. Poor little guys. The most famous myth is that the scribe traded his soul to the Prince of Darkness himself so that he could complete the book in only one night. Everything within the book has been handwritten by a single anonymous person. Created in the early 13th century in the Benedictine monastery of Bohemia, now modern-day Czech Republic, this book holds demonic power. The manuscript contains the complete Bible, Old and New Testaments, as well as all medicinal and cosmological knowledge, all written in Latin, and predated glyphs. However, it is, unbeknownst to any of us, missing 10 pages. Yeah, just ripped out missing. It's like a movie right there. Apparently some think the Codex was created by Herman the Recluse in the Benedictine monastery in the Czech Republic before being stolen and taken to Prague by the Emperor Rudolf II, who, fun fact, also stole the Voynich manuscript at one point. Yeah, this guy loved collecting like cursed, demonic, haunted scriptures, I guess. According to legend, the scribe was a monk who promised to create in one night a book to glorify the monastery forever, including all human knowledge. Near midnight, he became sure that he couldn't complete this task alone, so whipped out his pen and made a deal with Lucifer, asking him to help him finish the book in exchange for his soul. That's not really a good idea. It's thought it would have taken him at least 30 years non-stop writing to complete it. The book lays in the National Library of Sweden in Stockholm, where it is on display for the general public. Dude, I can't read Goosebumps without having nightmares, let alone going near this thing? Nah, I'm good.
Number 5 on this list is the Dybbuk box. This is an evil box that tormented many people and even claimed some lives along the way. Zach Baggins writes, according to Jewish folklore, a Dybbuk is a dark spirit that takes over the bodies of living people and uses them for evil. Legend has it that a Dybbuk can be trapped inside of a box and prevented from causing mischief unless the box is opened, that is. Several years ago, the Dybbuk box came up for sale on eBay. The seller listed a vintage wine cabinet that came from the estate of a woman who survived a World War II concentration camp. The seller, an antique dealer named Kevin Manus, claimed that the first owner's granddaughter was terrified of the box, warning him that her grandmother said it held a Dybbuk. After buying the cabinet, he was plagued by a series of unfortunate events and recurring nightmares of an old hag that would brutally attack him, causing him to wake up with bruises on his body. He also experienced an overpowering stench of cat urine in his home. Tragically, his mother suffered a stroke while opening the box. Not surprisingly, he decided to get rid of it. The box eventually ended up in the hands of Missouri Medical Museum director Jason Haxton, who was skeptical about the powers attributed to the box. He soon changed his mind. After acquiring the box, he began to experience a series of medical maladies, including bleeding eyes and strange rashes. He also began to dream of being attacked by an old hag and would also awake with bruises on his body. Kevin Manus told me that while the box was in Haxton's basement, a man died there and his body was found lying next to the box. He eventually became so unnerved by the box that he reached out to scientists and rabbis who instructed him to build a wooden ark lined with 24 karat gold, place the box inside, and bury it in the ground. Now, this actually wasn't the end of the story for this box. The box was eventually dug up again and then later donated to a museum. This was after it had tormented a few more people, mind you, though. Now it's fully encased in a glass covering, but even that doesn't stop the evil spirit from coming after people. Many people who have visited this box have reported having serious episodes in the room while they're looking at it. Whatever spirit is trapped inside this box, it is clearly an extremely powerful one. The box remains on display at the museum, but I wouldn't recommend going to check it out if I was you. Number 4 on this list is the Devil's Rocking Chair. The Devil's Rocking Chair is actually from one of Ed and Lorraine Warren's most famous case, The Devil Made Me Do It. Zach Baggins writes, the horror began in July 1980 when David Glatzel, 11 years old, became possessed by a demon. One night he woke up screaming, claiming that he had been visited by a man with big black eyes, a thin face with animal features, jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, and hooves. David was, everyone agreed, not the kind of kid who liked scary movies or who was likely to make things up, and he was visibly shaken up by this experience. He became rather withdrawn and quiet. His older sister, Debbie, asked her fiancé, Arn Johnson, if he would stay with her family for a while and see whether it would help David get out of his depression. Arn, of course, agreed, but things didn't get better. David reported having more nightmares about the terrifying man who promised to take his soul. Odd scratches and bruises began to appear on the boy, and all the injuries seemed to happen while he was asleep. Odd sounds, which Arn couldn't explain, were heard in the attic. Worst of all, David began to claim that he was now seeing the beast while he was awake. He was always seen sitting in the family's rocking chair, which the beast now claimed as his own. David was the only one who saw the beast in the chair, but family members often saw it rocking back and forth, seemingly under its own power. This was obviously a lot, so the Warrens were brought in to perform the exorcism. The exorcism took place in that rocking chair, and it's thought that the chair itself still has some evil energy from this spirit attached to it. Now the chair resides at the Haunted Museum, but owner Zach Baggins actually took the exhibit down because the chair was simply too dangerous, he thought. Number 3 on this list is the Hope Diamond. Don't get me wrong, guys, I would love to have this thing, but I just don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze here. Google Arts and Culture says, one of the most famous diamonds in the world, the Hope Diamond, originated in the Kolar mine in Andhra Pradesh, India. According to legend, the stone is cursed and brings misfortune to anyone who owns it. The curse is said to have come about when the original diamond was stolen from the eye of a statue. The thief met a grisly end, kick-starting a pattern of misfortune for all those who possessed the diamond. Over the years, owners of the Hope Diamond have befallen fates including death by murder, execution, they've taken their own lives, bankruptcy, and imprisonment. Thankfully, the curse seems to have have been lifted when the diamond was donated to the Smithsonian in 1958. Now, I don't really buy into the fact that this curse is lifted, in my opinion. Like, literally, if you own this diamond, then you die or someone you love dies. That's what's happened throughout history. In the best possible case scenario, you just get hit with like horrible luck and lose all your money or some other horrible thing. There just really isn't any good way to spin this. Owning the Hope Diamond is pretty much a horrible idea. Number 2 on this list is the unlucky mummy. Do not get on a boat if said boat is also carrying this mummy. Google Arts and Culture says the unlucky mummy isn't actually a mummy, but the mummy board or coffin lid of a high status woman who lived in around 950 to 900 BCE. Discovered in Thebes in the 1800s, the 4 young Englishmen who first purchased the mummy all died in unfortunate circumstances. Rumors of the curse soon spread, and in the early 20th century, journalist William Thomas Stead wrote an article on the jinxed artifact. Stead went on to be one of the passengers on the doomed Titanic. It's said that he told stories of the curse in the run-up to the disaster, with many believing that the mummy itself caused the ship's watery end. Today, the unlucky mummy is on display in the British Museum. The Titanic was supposed to be unsinkable. Enter in the unlucky mummy and boom, now the unsinkable ship goes down. Maybe it's a stretch to say that this thing caused the literal Titanic crash, but I can at least guarantee that it probably didn't help. At least this thing is now locked up in a museum very much on land and not connected to any boats that I know of. And number 1 on this list is the Hands Resist Him painting. I'm all about having some cool, groundbreaking art, but this painting definitely crosses the line. The lineup says there is no doubt the painting is disturbing. It shows a young boy standing next to a girl doll with hollow eyes and a sad, downturned mouth. The doll is holding a strange device with wires coming out of it. The eeriest part of the painting are the many disembodied children's hands reaching toward the boy through the glass panels of a door just behind him. But even more disturbing than the painting itself are the stories of what has happened to people who come in contact with it. A few years after the painting was sold, the art critic Henry Seldes died. Then the gallery owner died. Then in 1984, John Marley died. The painting disappeared, not surfacing again until 2000 in a bizarre posting on eBay. The new owners were trying to sell it because they said it was haunted. They claimed the boy and the doll in the picture would fight with each other during the night, terrifying their 4-year-old daughter. They set up a motion sensing camera in the room for 3 nights and claimed they had captured the boy in the picture leaving the frame and coming into the room, apparently fleeing in terror. The literal kid in the painting is leaving. Not freaking cool, guys. My paintings are supposed to be static and not moving, and they definitely aren't supposed to be walking around my home scaring the living bejesus out of me and my family. Apparently, this painting is locked up in a storage locker now, and no one is allowed to see it. Number 5 on this list is the Smelly photo. Alright everybody, beware of the Smelly photo, for if you purchase it, then you'll be cursed with a horrible smelling odor for all of eternity. Alright, so maybe it's not that dramatic, but apparently this is actually a thing. Mental Floss says this historic daggerette type is reportedly inhabited by a Victorian gent named Martin. It was initially found in the eaves of an attic, and its owner would bring it out for guests to see. Eventually, people began to notice that certain smells would mysteriously appear and just as mysteriously disappear, such as the scent of roses and cigar or pipe smoke, or even the odor of smoke from a wood fire, the seller writes. When questioned with a Ouija board, the spirit inside was sometimes talkative and even playful, but other times reticent. But some spooky things started happening in the house, like objects disappearing or being moved, and footsteps and whispers faintly heard. These strange goings on became more frequent until finally the image was removed from the house and sent to a collector who reports some continued activity. So I'm unsure if you can still buy this thing or if it's completely off the market for good, but realistically, you probably shouldn't want to be buying it anyways. Your house basically becomes immediately haunted with weird smells if you purchase this photo. Now, I will admit, some of these smells really aren't that bad, like roses. If this picture can just make my house smell like roses all the time, then I mean, that sounds pretty nice. Or honestly, cigar smoke can be really nice too. Like, there's definitely a time and place to have a good whiff of a cigar, but the big problem is that you can't really control this thing. So if my guy wanted to just scent the house up with the odor of unwashed 1800s Victorian era man, then he could totally do that. This item isn't gonna kill you or anything, but I do think that the novelty would wear off pretty fast and it could get annoying very quickly. Just make sure that you have some Febreze on hand if you do choose to buy it. Number 4 on this list is the Haunted Donkey. So this one could be very good or very bad depending on the person who purchases it. Mental Floss says this small decorative juice container has a surprisingly spooky backstory. According to the owner, it spontaneously fills up with water. The inherited piece has been exhibiting the odd behavior for years since the owner was a child. At first, they suspected that their grandmother, who owned the item at the time, was filling it with water, but once she died, they discovered that there was something else at play. One night, the seller knocked against the jug by accident and noticed it sounded like it had liquid in it. When I investigated, I found that there was indeed water in it, they wrote. I thought maybe it was a mistake, they explained, but it's happened sporadically ever since. I'm not scared or anything, but I'm just not into the type of stuff. I wish my Nana well in the afterlife, but it's just not for me, they said. Now, one thing that isn't mentioned there is what happens if you drink the water. Apparently, if you have a good heart and are kind and caring and look out for your fellow human, then drinking this water is fine and it's believed to even give you good luck. But if you don't possess those qualities that I just listed, if you're rude, if you're selfish, and if you're greedy, if you only look out for yourself and will walk over other individuals for your own personal gain, then drinking this water will do the opposite. You will be cursed with bad luck and it will be very hard to get rid of it. So that's what I mean. This item can be very polarizing and can be super good depending on who buys it, or it could be super bad. Number 3 on this list is the Tai Jin mask. We have another cursed item from eBay here that can certainly have its benefits but also have its drawbacks as well if you aren't careful with it. Mental Floss says the person selling this mask claims that they personally witnessed a witch in Thailand capture a jinn or genie in it. Among the mask's alleged talents are the ability to bring the owner riches and the ability to keep vampires away. Both are useful skills, but they come with a price. You must make offerings of food and drink to keep the jinn happy. Not to mention the fact that for the first month you have to meditate on his name 3 times a day for 20 minutes each. So here's my thing. Riches and the ability to ward off vampires, that sounds cool, I like it. I mean, who wouldn't want to have a magical mask that can make you rich? That'd be awesome. Granted, there is that whole other thing too. This is a jinn, and even though that's really cool, I don't want to fall into a trap of fully trusting this thing. Genies are very tricky. They say one thing, you take it at face value, but they mean something else entirely. So this thing might say something and make you believe that you're getting rich, and then totally flip the script on you and have it mean something else. Also, let's not forget that if you mess up a little bit and don't offer this thing food or water or meditate on it 3 times a day, then it will probably choose to respond decently badly to you. These are all risks that I personally don't think I'm willing to take. Also, here's my other thing. Like, if this mask is gonna give you tons of riches, then why is somebody selling it on eBay? Why would you need to sell this thing if you're already super rich based on the mask? And if it was that great, then wouldn't you want to keep it? I don't know, just some stuff to consider before you pull the trigger on this thing. Number 2 on this list is Lisa's shoes. Lisa was a young girl who lived back in the Victorian era a long time ago. Now apparently she died way too soon. We think it was sepsis, but we don't really know when she died or why she died for sure. All we know is that she was taken from the earth way too early. Mental Floss says, said to contain the spirit of a little girl called Lisa, these shoes were found by someone who was curating their late aunt's estate, tucked in a nursery closet alongside various Victorian clothes and toys. They suspected they were haunted, the seller writes, since there was a lot of knocking in the nursery closet. If actually possessed, tap dancing might wake one up in the middle of the night. The noise wasn't the only indication of the shoes' otherworldly nature. The house they were found in was rumored to be home to a number of ghosts, including that of a woman who had murdered her baby there in the 19th century and the spirit of a 9-year-old girl who died of sepsis. So if you're the type of individual who likes to fall asleep to the sound of cursed shoes dancing all over the floor, then I guess this is for you. I don't know how many of those people are out there, but hey, no judgment here. I personally do not have any interest in purchasing some cursed shoes, but that's just me. Apparently, if your heart really does desire such a thing, then a few clicks on eBay is all it's gonna take. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Anguished Man painting. The Anguished Man painting has been something that we've talked a decent amount about on this channel when it comes to haunted and cursed paintings. Well, you can buy this haunted / cursed painting on eBay if you wanted to do so. The seller of this oil painting describes it as a horrific paranormal portrait. The artist is unknown, but according to its owner, the artwork may be responsible for a number of spooky goings on around the house. Since owning this painting, I've experienced a number of strange paranormal events that cannot be easily explained, the seller writes in the listing. These include hearing disembodied footsteps from elsewhere in the house, the sound of bird songs appearing out of thin air in the living room, and finally observing a heavy metal door latch lift by itself and the kitchen door open by itself. So that's a hard pass from me, guys. Not only will this painting curse you and your home, but also, like, really isn't that great of a painting to begin with. I mean, I don't want to disrespect the artist here. I'm sure that they had a great vision, but I don't really want to have a picture of a screaming dude in my home just looking at me all the time. Even if this thing wasn't haunted and was just totally normal, that would still scare the bejesus out of me late at night when I'm half asleep going to get a glass of water or something. If you are about it though, then hit them up on eBay and you can get the Anguished Man painting in your home today.